I'm waiting for death. How much have you got? Welcome to Strip Cover Lit. I'm Adrian Fort.
I'm Dalton Gentry.
And we're here for something very special today. Dalton, tell them. Tell them.
We're doing Emily Dickinson again.
Say it with panache.
This week we're doing Emily Dickinson. This is what's it called? Because I Could Not Stop for Death.
Say it again and mean it.
This week we're doing Emily Dickinson because I could not stop for death.
You're dead on the inside.
I know. You have no idea right now.
Yes.
Good things, bad things. What do you want to talk about?
We'll start off with two readings.
You want to do a reading again?
Yes.
You always make fun of my reading every time.
Poetry, we start with two readings.
Fair enough.
Go ahead.
Because I could not stop for death.
Stop. Do it right.
Are you deaf? Because I could not stop for death, he kindly stopped for me. The carriage held but just ourselves in immortality. We slowly drove, he knew no haste, and I had put away my labor and my leisure too for his civility. We passed the school where children strove at recess in the ring. We passed the fields of gazing grain. We passed the setting sun. Or rather, he passed us. The dews drew quivering and chill, for only gossamer, my gown, my tippet, only toll. We paused before a house that seemed a swelling of the ground. The roof was scarcely visible, the cornice in the ground. Since then, 'tis centuries, and yet feels shorter than the day. I first surmised the horses' heads were towards eternity.
Did you feel good about that reading?
No, I didn't.
Okay, good.
Because I'm so self-conscious now that I stumble over myself because I'm like, Adrian's going to say something. Please read it in the fashion of Emily Dickinson.
Because I could not stop for death, he kindly stopped for me. The carriage held but just ourselves in immortality. We slowly drove, he knew no haste, and I had put away my labor and my leisure too for his civility. We passed the school where children strove at recess in the ring. We passed the fields of gazing grain. We passed the setting sun, or rather, he passed us. The dews drew quivering and chill, for only gossamer my gown, my tippet, my tulle. We paused before a house that seemed a swelling of the ground. The roof was scarcely visible, the cornice in the ground. Since then, 'tis centuries, and yet feels shorter than the day. I first surmised the horses' heads were towards eternity. That's a beautiful poem.
Absolutely. It's life-changing. I don't want to read anything more than Emily Dickinson for the rest of my life.
Don't you?
So, good things.
Does this mean we can stop the Harry Potter nonsense?
Absolutely not, because I still am here, and I am going to talk about some Emily Dickinson. And I want you to know that the more I'm around you, my handwriting gets worse and worse. It's getting to the point of illegible, so you may have to read it for me.
I have good handwriting.
Okay. Good things and bad things, because as much as I hate to admit it, there are good things in this.
You go first.
Okay. The use of time in this piece, I think, is absolutely apparent, very much with William Carlos Williams, which I like to discuss with the Red Wheelbarrow, how it's picturesque, and how it's a use of zooming in and zooming out. This is what you get that with time. More so with that, this is the eternal journey of death. This is something that everyone must go for. It's inevitable. You must go on that ride. When you hear the word death, what do you imagine? Usually it's that very stereotypical, because if you're riding with death, it's that sullen, skeletal figure.
Right.
This to me reads as a woman narrator, because it's Emily Dickinson. I always get that vibe from it. So this is really beauty contrasting death. Because there are some wonderful things in here where she's talking about, or he, whatever you want to go with that, the beauty of the dew. Quivering and chill. There's wonderful things. We pass the children playing, the happiness of the children, but it's so stricken alongside death. It's a great contrast, in my opinion. Tell me what I'm wrong with.
Are you saying that women are only good for their looks?
Yes, that's exactly what I'm saying on the internet, because that's safe. Carry on.
Three good things. This is transcendent. No matter who you are or what you have or have not done, this is your poem. This is personification to the nth degree. when you talk about death.
Okay.
The mention of children in this poem is absolutely chilling.
See? We had something in common. Almost.
3 bad things.
3 bad things. This is Emily Dickinson. And as I've said, with every single piece of Emily Dickinson, I can appreciate it, but I don't enjoy Emily Dickinson. So this is bad for me.
You're bad.
At a base level reading, if you are not putting any thought to this, it's just a carriage ride.
Okay.
Nothing more to it. And I think that's unfortunate. This is also an example of what we like to talk about with Emily Dickinson. She doesn't punctuate. This is the hyphen. This is nothing but hyphens.
Why is that bad?
When you are someone who sits down to read poetry, as myself, and I can flip over to Walt Whitman here, I know how it's supposed to sound, because I have my commas, I have my endings. This drives me insane.
Because you're not being told what to do?
Yes.
You follower.
Carry on. I want to hear your bad things about Emily Dickinson.
If you're not open to poetry, you're not open to this. This will bring no lifeblood into poetry. This does not strike you if you are not a poetry reader. This does not belong to new readers, right?
Okay.
New readers of poetry will see this poem and I would say they probably would not enjoy it.
Okay.
This could honestly be briefer. I think you take 1 or 2 stanzas out of this, it becomes a quicker punch. And the payoff, talking about punch, the payoff in this poem is not in the league of I Died for Beauty, right?
Okay.
What's the best line? Okay, good. What was your?
I was just going to say, so this is not your favorite Dickinson.
It's not my favorite Emily Dickinson poem. It's a good one.
And that's really interesting
because Emily Dickinson wrote it.
I think out of the Dickinson poems, this is one of the ones that's a big one. You're going to read this. This is a classic. This is Emily Dickinson. You're probably going to read this. You're going to I heard a fly buzz.
Yeah.
It's these 2. Favorite line? For some reason, it's driving me nuts, and I've talked about this before we started filming this episode. The house is driving me insane. It is absolutely driving me insane. So I want to comment that is the best line, but I don't think it is. The final line. I first surmised the horses' heads were towards eternity. Toward eternity. I think that sums it up.
For me, the best pair of lines, we paused before a house that seemed a swelling of the ground.
Okay, so explain the house to me. Let's talk about that house.
Go ahead. Carry on.
What is the point of the house?
You tell me.
Because if I am reading Emily Dickinson and I am going on this is a capturing of time, this is transcending time. This is the infinite after that we're all going to have to deal with. Whether there is any form of afterlife, there is going to be infinite nothing. Once you are dead.
Infinite something.
Or infinite something. However you want to take it. This seems to be the passing of time. We passed before a house that seemed a swelling of the ground. The roof was scarcely visible, the cornice in the ground. So this to me is either they're passing the house, and through the passing of this is the house is decaying. Or the house is already decayed. There's no more. Because this maybe was a house that she recognized in her living world, and now it's since gone. Because once death has occurred, time's leaving you. Things are going to change. You're not going to be there for that. So that's what's driving me nuts about this, is I don't know where to jab at it. So what do you got?
Well, I think the house here, for me, does 2 things. Before that, we get... Well, I think the ultimate question of the poem is why she could not stop for death.
Okay.
And I think that written into this almost too well is that passing of time, because before that, 2 stanzas before that, we pass the school where children strove. And then we get to a house.
Okay.
Right? So I think that, for me, just listen to this. We paused before a house that seemed a swelling of the ground. The roof was scarcely visible, the cornice in the ground. Do you know what a cornice is?
What is a cornice?
A cornice is basically ornamental architecture that is normally like on the roof or the ceiling.
Okay.
So if you were looking at a house that seemed a swelling of the ground, might this be a metaphor for being buried?
It very well could be.
The cornice could be your tombstone.
Decorative tombstone, yes. And that would make more sense how if someone has been recently buried, there's a swelling of the ground, because it mounds up.
The roof scarcely visible, the cornice in the ground, you've got the tombstone planted there. But also, when you're thinking about the progression of life, when you're a child, the house is not yours. When you're an adult, the house is yours.
Okay.
So we pass the children, then we pass. We've got this, or rather, with the son, or rather, he passed us. The dews drew quivering and chill, for only my gossamer, my gown, my tippet, only tool. That seems to be individualization. So maybe a coming of age, and then you've got the home.
Okay.
So you come full circle into adulthood as you're passing through life. So kids, young adult, adult.
Okay.
Right? At least that's how it sounds to me. And also, during this time period, a house is going to be, classic symbology, the house represents the woman, right?
All right.
So we pause before a house that seems a swelling of the ground. We've got this speaker being buried. The house is the person.
Okay.
The house is femininity. It is all things female. So I think for me that's a level that's there.
Okay.
How do you feel about that reading? Those readings?
I think I got behind what you were saying with the passing of time from childhood to young adulthood to adulthood, with the children, the clothing, and the home. You kind of lost me with the bearing of femininity. I'm not going to lie to you there.
Okay.
But I do think I can agree with you through that, because the way I read this is time. Once you are dead, time marches on. Look at that plug right there. I wish I could play it right now. I enjoy that. Now, speaking of time, how old is this person?
I'm saying new adult age, which in this time period would have been very much adulthood.
Okay. I'm going to say younger, so I could get behind new adult. I agree with you here. To me, the line, because I could not stop for death, he kindly stopped for me, that's live fast and leave a beautiful corpse. I think this is a tragic death.
I would argue that, because I think that what this is, why could this person not stop for death? It seems to have a lot to do with working.
You think so?
It seems to have a lot to do with I have to get in this work for sustainability of myself, my family, It does not seem, because I could not stop for death, does not seem like I was going too fast for it. It seems like I had too much else to do.
Okay.
It seems, I had kids to raise, I had things to do on the farm, I had things to do in the house, I had this, that, and the other to have
I
to
just kept
accomplish.
pushing off that dinner date. I just couldn't get to it. I don't know. I think that, to me, makes this so much more enjoyable. If you look at this from the reading of someone who has continuously just led this fast life, they don't have time to stop and realize the destruction that themselves are, they're doing to themselves. And therefore, death waits. Death waits until it is opportune. And because you couldn't stop, that's when you hit it.
But you can also work yourself to death.
You can also work, and that is very realistic, and I think for the 1800s time period, probably more so the case. But from a modern look at this, I think that's beautiful.
Now, where was this person going that death had to stop to pick them up?
I don't know. It's a damn good question.
There is travel insinuated, isn't there?
There is travel insinuated. The carriage held but just ourselves in immortality. So obviously the death is picking her up and taking her on a ride. I'm referring to her as her from now on, by the way.
Okay.
And if you look at it that way, this could be the stereotypical once you die, you have to relive your life and atone for your sins. This could be the passage through her childhood. This could be her seeing herself grow. This could basically be her living her life all the way up to, like you said, her funeral with the tombstone.
To me, this seems like keeling over on the way home from work. Is what it feels like, right? You're walking home from work, you've done too much.
I've made this so romantic, but it's really just I died in the street because I had a bad day.
Well, is that not tragic?
It is very tragic.
Is that not more tragic than live fast and leave a beautiful corpse? Because someone who has worked their entire life and dies burnt out never really lived.
Very correct.
Listen, what are the children doing at school? They are at recess.
Yes.
They are at recess. She's watching these kids play. This is no longer a part of her life.
Okay. Now, I've said many, many times I don't enjoy Dickinson.
And every time we do this, you find things that you like.
And I do. Because you can appreciate something without liking it. I would say I enjoy this one more than I do most.
Okay. Why would you say that?
Again?
Because you said that last time as well.
Did I?
Yes.
Well, when we do I Heard a Fly Buzz, I will not be saying that. Because it's on the other page and I keep staring at it.
Until I talk you into it.
Until you talk me into it. What is your fascination with Emily Dickinson? What makes this beauty to you?
And you know, that touches on one of the things that I'd written down to talk about with this, in that I am afraid to look into actual criticism of this piece, of Emily Dickinson as a whole, in a way that I am not, for example, with Shakespeare. Sonnet 18, I brought up all the things that I had learned about why the poem may have been written. I don't do that with Emily Dickinson. Emily Dickinson was my YA.
Okay.
This was my young adult fiction. I remember when I very first got my license, I remember driving to the bookstore. It was in the mall here, one of the malls here, Antioch Mall, which is no longer there. Good riddance, because
you old man.
In that bookstore, there was 3 sections of poetry.
Okay.
And I would go there and I would spend hours. And everyone would think I was stealing because what's a 16-year-old boy doing in the poetry section?
You creep.
Are you over here smoking something?
You damn pervert.
Right. So I'd spend hours there, and then one day I went in, and that 3 sections became 2 sections. A little bit later I went in, that 2 sections was 1 section. And I go in a little bit later, and the poetry which had been on the front wall was in the back corner. And then eventually you go in and there's no poetry section.
Yeah. And that's incredibly unfortunate. The bookstore I worked at, we had 1 shelf for poetry. And it wasn't even a full shelf. No, it was half poetry, half theater.
Right.
And it's not appreciated like it once was. It is gone.
And today in Barnes & Noble, poetry is in the same section as essays. Right. So it's sad to me that poetry has gotten to that place. But Emily Dickinson, like I said, was my young adult fiction. This was where I started as a reader.
Okay.
This was where my imagination for the craft was developed. This is where my vivid and continuous dream to go back to John Gardner sprung up.
Okay.
So I didn't have that leap in novels, right? The first time I ever read young adult fiction was actually, I was 25, 26 years old as a class. Cadden's class in Missouri Western.
And not a good example of any young adult fiction. Young adult fiction that you're not going to read anyway.
Right. So those things, those are the reasons that I hold Emily Dickinson so near and dear to my heart, if I can go cliche. This was it for me for a very long time, and I just buried myself in it. And we will find examples of Emily Dickinson that will please you.
Oh, no. I appreciate the lovely, heartfelt sentiment with the entire internet world, but I want to enjoy Dickinson, but it's not what I want. It's not Bukowski.
That, or I will crush you with Dickinson because I have to read 30,000 pages of Harry Potter. You don't have to find Bukowski in everything. This is not Bukowski.
I want to find Bukowski.
It will not be Bukowski.
I want that grit. I want that dirty, beautiful realism.
There is dirt, there is grit in Emily Dickinson. It's just not going to come by way of cigars and whiskey.
So Dickinson's the cognac.
Martell.
That's what it is?
Yeah,
that's
she's
good.
the cognac. Martell, baby.
Anyway, what else can we talk about with Emily Dickinson, because I could not stop for death?
Is this an atheistic poem?
I don't think so, no.
Well, back that up.
This is proclaiming there is some form of afterlife. Because in the beginning, she could not stop for death, so he kindly stopped for me. She's being picked up by death. She is going on a post-death journey. There is some form of afterlife she's experiencing.
Is there?
Yes.
Explain it.
Well, she's going through, and even if she is just reliving her life, she's going through that. She's seeing the children playing. She's seeing the house that we talked about. there is something there. It's some form of journey, some form of experience post-death.
Since then, 'tis centuries and yet feels shorter than the day, I first surmised the horses' heads were toward eternity. Where are they when that takes place? They're in the carriage still.
Yeah. On the journey.
Her and death and immortality.
Okay.
And it's centuries later.
Okay.
They're not going to get anywhere. They're past the sun. They're into the darkness.
And that's a hard concept to fathom. That there is nothing after death. It's just non-existent darkness. I don't know here. I think it could go both ways. Would I like to say there is no obvious Christian overtone here. There's no obvious religious overtone that I could see. So yeah, I could give the argument that it could be a atheist piece. However, to me, it feels like there is some form of journey.
Journey, but that doesn't necessarily... It seems like there is movement.
Yes.
Which is the closest thing that we're getting to an afterlife here.
Okay.
This is not... No, hold on. This is not the middle ground between life and death.
Okay.
Right? This is death.
This is death.
Gone.
So what you're saying, this
kaput.
is not just the brain still functioning, but the body's shutting down, so she's experiencing all this, some vivid hallucination before death.
What I'm saying is this might be the last few flickers
that might be
going
the last
on in your brain. But this would be in the Christian afterlife when you are experiencing those people that you read about so many times on Sunday.
Okay.
Right? This is where it happens, and we're not there.
No.
This is where those people should be coming forward, and they're not there.
There's nothing there. It's darkness. Fade to black. I actually kind of like that, and I hate you for bringing that up. You son of a bitch. So, where else can we go?
There are no stakes claimed by the speaker, are there?
No stakes?
No stakes claimed.
I don't think
There
so.
is no, I'm going to miss this. There is no, yeah, but I never got to do this.
No, it's the human experience.
This is someone who's worked themselves to death and they have nothing.
Back to it, I understand.
This is someone who's worked themselves to death and they might not want to accept the fact that they're gone, but they're certainly not reveling in anything. They're not missing anything.
Well, obviously the speaker at this point has accepted death. It's not a longing towards life.
It's definitely not a longing towards life, but I don't know that it's an acceptance of death.
I think at this point you have to accept death.
At what point in the poem does that happen?
Once she steps foot on the carriage, she has accepted the fact she is dead. Now, whether she is reliving something, she's going back and seeing all this vision.
Centuries and yet feel shorter than the day I first surmised the horses' heads were toward eternity.
Centuries later, she's still on the journey. She's accepted it.
She does not accept.
Okay, if you say
she's there, but she's not accepting anything. Now let's look at things from a modern reader standpoint.
Okay.
If we can bring a little bit of that into this.
I like that.
Who do you stop and pick up? There's hitchhikers.
Okay.
And there's prostitutes.
Okay.
In the modern world, those are the people that you stop the car and you pick them up, right?
We don't pick up hitchhikers anymore. But
I don't know what
right.
you're doing in St. Joe that you're neglecting to deny that. But so is this a hitchhiker? Can we read hitchhiking into this? Is this Jack Kerouac?
Oh, don't bring up Jack Kerouac. We're done with On the Road. We will forever be done with On the Road. Maybe. And the concept of death with this, I think that pairs well, because that is a dangerous lifestyle, both prostitution and hitchhiking. Once you're picked up, that could be your last pickup. So there is that sense of danger, that sense of looming death. So yeah, I kind of like that. I can get on board with that.
The sense of being on edge.
It's constant on edge, and that's hell. That is absolute hell. And if there is some eternal, awful journey into nothing, it is constantly being on edge like that.
Is it being on the road?
No, it's not being on the road. We're done with Kerouac.
Right, but you see what I'm saying?
Yes.
Never knowing.
Never knowing where you're going to sleep.
Never
knowing if you're going to be, if you wake up tomorrow, if you're going to make it through the day.
Never knowing if you're going to die.
You always just have to tie it together.
Because I could not stop for death.
And put a bow on it and try to produce it in some form that I will enjoy. So, Adrian, I just read Because I Could Not Stop for Death. What should I read next?
I would say The Life You Save May Be Your Own by Flannery O'Connor.
Okay.
If you enjoy that just painful gut punch that comes slowly and comes miserably and that you're still really writhing to accept, The Life You Save May Be Your Own by Flannery O'Connor is very much in the same vein.
Richard Corey. Edwin Arlington Robinson. And you know why? We're going to cut all the bullshit, all the mope and all the sadness and all the emo bullshit of Emily Dickinson. We're going to get to a story that actually packs a punch, that hurts, that's real, that has grit, and is wonderful.
Awfully sing-songy to have grit.
It's okay, it's sing-songy. A lot of classical poetry is sing-songy.
Awfully sing-song to have
You've got
grit.
to get over that part when you appreciate classic poetry. Now, what would you rate this Dickinson poem?
I would give this 90 cornices out of 100.
Okay. I really want to be an asshole and give it a C average, but I don't think even I can give it a C average.
I don't think you know what you're talking about.
I'll give it 85. 85 is reasonable.
You have no idea how to read.
I have no idea how to put numbers onto things either. I just make one up. Like, I'm probably going to start giving things strings of 42. I give this a 42 and a 42.
You do that with Emily Dickinson, you won't be. Because Dalton could not stop for death.
Because
I clocked him in the face.
Oh, we should do parodies of poetry. That should be a thing. Anyway, if you enjoy Emily Dickinson, I do apologize, but make sure you put down in the comments below what this poem means to you. What are your suggestions to move forward from this poem? What should we do next?
What Emily Dickinson poem should we read next? Make sure you follow us. Make sure you leave us a like. And follow us on Twitter at StripCover, on Facebook at StripCoverLit, and on what is it?
Instagram.
At StripCoverLit.